Like Carl, I'm really delighted to have Andrew and Connie here tonight. I have read their book, The Trust Frequency, and what I really appreciate and admire over the years has been this gathering of what I feel is, and I had a vision many years ago before all of this, of a nomadic teaching entity. And basically it was consciousness, these individuals that would take on many roles and always an examination of, well, who are we then? And one of the great things that drew us together was our love of the American Transcendentalists, their love of Thoreau and Emerson and mine as well. And a lot of what's happened here was based on that sense of that when times are difficult, which they always are, have a conversation that returns us to a sense of who and what we are. And that's why when I read the book, I really felt that sense that at least I grew up feeling no one gave us an instruction manual. And it's interesting, my friend Eric is here as well, who's written a work on word magic, which is really understanding the nature of words and how we're programmed by them, but with beautiful poetry. And I start to see the contribution that so many different people are making in so many different ways.
Well, and one of the books I wrote is called "We Do Come with Instructions."
and that's really what Connie, what Andrew and Connie have done, is that it's really answering that question of not which is right or wrong, but what are the templates? Because obviously, this is what I discovered upstairs, that there's really this sense of, wait a minute, there are templates, there are relationships, there are, in a sense, qualities of integrity and a sense of alignment that as we return to, because in a way we're trying to wake ourselves up from a type of sleepwalking, a type of set of assumptions that are now bounding back saying, wait a minute, slow down, take a look. And I really, when I read the book, and then of course know them, that I find them very instrumental in really trying with wisdom and with heart and with humor, find a way to say, wait a minute, let's take a look at how we're wired. And if we start fighting over what we believe and start examining what we actually know now, we're going to cultivate, finally, a responsible and noble version of who and what we are. And for that, we seek the trust frequency. And my dear friends, Andrew and Connie, I just want to say welcome to Olandar and thank you.
Well, it's wonderful. And thank you all for coming. We're thrilled to have a sea of faces out there.
What a beautiful sea of faces. Wow. And if any of you are not yet my best friend, would you make sure that we fix that?
And we have an email sign-up sheet that's going around. We hope you sign so you can get some more information from us. Because we have been doing work with the Transcendentalists with Thoreau. We just have done a performance piece called Thoreau and Einstein, Two Mystics Who Changed the World. So we hope to perform that here at some point. But we've just done that in Aspen.
When you see that, I'm the guy with the mustache.
He plays Albert Einstein. And it premiered at the Thoreau Society this last July. So what we'd like to do is start with the opening prayer that's in our book. Our book is an indigenous cosmology, quantum science synthesis. And I think all you folks, we're going to assume that you guys have some idea of those kinds of words and all that. So we're going to speak to an intelligent audience tonight because you read them. You're here because you read what Carla put out, and we really pretty much laid it out that we were going to be presenting some concepts tonight. So we wanted to open with this opening prayer that we actually found in Malibu at a friend's house when we were writing the book, and he was a friend of this Native American who wrote this. And so if everyone would just breathe deep and quiet one's mind, I'll read it. Grandfather, creator of all that exists, with this sacred pipe, hear my prayer. As the new day dawns, let all people begin anew to walk the good red road of life. May we forget our differences. May we remember our likenesses. Let us hear what we have not heard. Let us see what we have not seen. It is the spark of the universe, the oneness of all life. In such a way, may we be blessed in a sacred manner. And this was written by Wayne Eagleboy.
So I have to say that Lee McCloskey is a tough act to follow. Because a really wise thing to do right now would be to sit and go into silence for the next 60 minutes just to remember what he said and do our best to assimilate it, instead of raging on into the next powerful challenge to our abilities to conceive of this other reality, which is not another reality, it's the only reality to which we are not going to return because there's no going back, but toward which we are inevitably moving. So Lee, thank you for your vision and your wisdom and your words, and
Thank you.
I regard Lee as one of the great philosophers of our time.
Thank you.
And painters.
And I sit with great philosophers.
So, this idea of an instruction manual, this idea of how do we do it? What is it? So, part of the mission, my mission in life was to discover it. Like, oh, does he get it? Does she get it? What is it? So, it to me is an intimation, a hint, a sense that there is something more, there is something better. I first probably had that experience or that feeling when I was about 14, I think. Back in high school, I happened to have a genius high school buddy. Everybody needs a genius high school buddy. Seriously, who at the age of 14 is bringing in Buddhist texts, and I'm in South Africa, and we're learning about Tibetan Buddhism. Then the next thing he brings in is a book called On the Road by some American guy named Jack Kerouac. So now we're planning the rest of our lives, which have to do with the Dharma bums getting to California, sticking our thumbs out, and here we are. That's how I got here. But there's something. It was contained in two words that I encountered, I think in a Life magazine or a Time magazine, in around 66 or 67 in South Africa, and it was the two words, cosmic consciousness. And I was trying to be a Christian, and for a while I had a Jewish girlfriend who broke up with me because I wasn't Jewish. And I started to realize there's all this stuff, all these cosmologies that have been created and sort of they've become rigid. To me, they've become sort of fossilized. And why would a beautiful girl who I adored break up with me because I was not of the same religion as her? It was because it would have created huge problems in her family. It took me a long time to understand that. Point being, there are these different ways of getting it. What is it? It is a higher reality, the potential of the human being to be something perhaps more evolved, perhaps more loving, more creative, kinder, certainly happier, all of those things that are perhaps the goal of the spiritual quest. It's not about sitting in a cave and isolating oneself, to me. It's not about rushing into the world and trying to make $1 million so then I can be happy. You know, all of these options were presented with as a teenager. What am I going to do with my life? My intention was I was going to maximize my potential, whatever that meant, and I didn't have any idea what it meant, except that there was something there. I couldn't quite name it. Okay. Fast forward to 10 years ago when Connie and I met. We're at Omega, we're in a gathering of shamans, and I meet this woman who's been spending a lot of time with Native American elders and has an extraordinary articulation of the nature of reality, to the point where it's almost that instruction manual. It's, oh, here's an explanation that's pretty simple. Most people can get this. It's not a massive pile of mystical books that you have to strain your brain for the next decade to study. There are all these study groups studying all these wonderful things, and I love them. But is there a way of sort of just cutting to the chase? So I kept saying to Connie in those first few months, you've got to write a book. You've got to write a book. Well, where's the book?
He wrote the book.
It turned out she was not really about to write the book, but if a writer showed up in her life and wrote the book, she was cool.
I'm about what's after reading, about what's after books. So
Yeah.
we can intake information a whole lot faster than through the written word. But meanwhile, the written word serves us.
So the trust frequency, 10 assumptions for a new paradigm. Firstly, the trust frequency, what's that? It's a state of being. It's nirvana. It's heaven on earth. It's that place we are, that vibratory state we're in when we're in love. It's so different from that vibratory state that we're in when we're in fear or anxiety or stuck in the traffic and grinding our teeth. We know the difference. How do we get from one place to another? And most of us are somewhere in between. There are certainly ecstatics. There are people who somehow manage to be there. They're just in love. They're there already. There are others who can't even imagine what that might mean. So this is kind of a toolkit, textbook, something like that. 10 assumptions for a new paradigm. Paradigm shift. Everybody talks, I think we all in this room would agree that a new paradigm would be a darn good idea for the planet. So what's a paradigm? A paradigm is simply a set of beliefs, a set of assumptions. What's an assumption? It's a belief that we don't question. We take it for granted. Where did we get our fundamental assumptions from? As little kids, we took them in as 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, from our mom, our dad, from TV, from school, from our buddies, from the minister of church, whatever. We received information that we took to be true because it came from a place of authority. We internalized it and forgot all about it. It went unconscious, subconscious, and it has such power because that's where it lives. We don't know it's there, and it actually determines the way we think, the way we act, the way we feel, and so on. So once you get to that point, you go, okay, if that sounds pretty simple, I have these beliefs, these assumptions. What are they? Somebody walked up to me on Christopher Street in Manhattan and said, what are your 10 most fundamental beliefs? I'm making it up. Has anybody ever had that experience where you've actually been asked that question, or even asked yourself that question, looked in the mirror and said, what are my most fundamental beliefs? This seems important. I think it's important, and it's not a question. Our culture, I think maybe Buddhist cultures or others may actually go there. But in our culture, it's not common. I think it's changing, but it's certainly not the mainstream at this point.
No.
So then you go to, okay, what other dominant current assumptions? And then, where did I get that from? And do I still agree with that? Do I want that to be running my life? Or is there an alternative? And if so, what's the alternative? So that's what the book does. It just identifies 10 alternative, or offers 10 alternative assumptions. Primary one is, really sort of fundamental, is what kind of universe do we live in? Well, the mechanistic worldview that's taught in school and college and through science, the Newtonian, Descartesian, reductionist vision of reality, is that the universe is a giant clockwork thing. It's definitely not alive. To say it loves me is nuts. It contains life, obviously, because biology is a fact, but it's not itself alive. What if it's completely the opposite of that? What if it is not only alive, it is life itself? What if it is the only thing there is? What if the universe is a living, evolving, biological entity, the only one we know of, that we are an inextricable part of, that totally loves us because there's no alternative, because it is comprised of love, with a capital L. Seeing love as a subatomic energy, as a fundamental force of the universe, not holding hands. I love holding hands, love. Look at my friends holding hands. Yes. Oh, but not that kind of love. That kind of love is a good practice. It's a good hint. But that kind of love that is so profoundly creative and unconditional in its nature. So just there's a seed thought that we live in a universe. Through quantum physics, we have some idea of sort of the interconnectedness of everything. We have some idea of the sheer power and the forces involved to create galaxies and black holes and so on. It's actually kind of unimaginable. So part of the excitement of being a human being is we have this imagination where we're trying to imagine this. So the first assumption of the 10 assumptions, and I'm going to get to this is what will take us to the paradoxes. Because tonight's title for the talk is Paradox, Resolved. Paradox, resolved. Humans encounter paradoxes where things don't add up. That does not make sense. So we're going to present a bunch of things that absolutely do not make sense, and then we're going to do our best to resolve those paradoxes. So the first assumption in the book, in the 10 assumptions, is we live in a conscious, loving universe. There is only love. No matter what it looks like, there's only love. Which immediately brings up a paradox. What about war? What about poverty? What about all the nasty stuff we read about in the newspaper and see on television every day? Is there a paradox there? How can there be nothing but love? Because it's very easy to identify things and say, that is not love. There's the first paradox. So we're going to go through a series of alternative assumptions. If we can take them on, change everything. Because the minute I am part of a conscious, loving universe, I'm a very different entity than I am when I'm part of I'm not even part of, I'm just sort of I'm just here. And over there somewhere there's something called God, but nobody knows what that is. And I'm part of this mechanical thing. You know, that's not a very joyful, warm and fuzzy type of way to relate to me and the universe I live in. So, I live in a conscious, loving universe. There is only love. I even like to say there is nothing but love. Nothing exists except love. Paradox, anyone? Huge paradox. Okay, so each of these is totally contrary to what we've been taught, what we've grown up to believe. Can we resolve the paradox? Assumption number 2 is, let me toss it to you, the second assumption is?
Well, we see things as not love because we don't understand the nature of that love that drives all things. And so the second assumption is the universe loves us unconditionally. It gives us everything we ask for. So that's why this is how we resolve the paradox of there's only love. How can there be only love? We all know God is love. But how can God be love when there's abuse, when there's war, when there's famine, when there's all the horrible things that go on? So we ultimately develop a split in our psyche, which says, okay, there's a part of me that resonates to God as love, but there's another part of me that sees that there is all this war, so that's impossible, so I'm not going to go with that there is a loving universe. So what we resolve it with the fact that this nature of this love is unconditional, that we are so loved by the universe that we are given everything we ask for. So our core beliefs become our requests to the universe. And we are given what we believe. If we believe in scarcity, which our whole economic system is based on scarcity, that's basic. So fundamental, we don't even question it. I have a degree in economics, and it's the problem of scarcity. That's what the economic system is set up to do, to deal with. And the environmental movement is based on scarcity. You know, and the human being is the worst thing to ever happen because we use stuff and we pollute with what we use and all that stuff. So it's such a core belief, and in a higher frequency there is abundance. The laws that exist here in this frequency are real and immutable in this frequency. And that's where we're conditioned to think is the only game in town, is this frequency. But it's not. And what we're bringing with this construct is that we have the free will to move ourselves out of the frequency, individually. We can change our reality by changing our frequency. And we're giving the tools to do that. And so this unconditional nature of the universe, when we get smacked upside the head, we are getting smacked upside the head for our journey to wholeness. We have a definition of humanity that says we are a collection of divine, autonomous, sovereign beings who have chosen to incarnate on earth with a gift and a purpose on our soul's journey to wholeness. So we're proposing that these assumptions and definitions one has to take as absolutely true to have it change anything. So if one says, okay, there is only love, this has to be love, it's absolutely true, then the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. You get a different answer to why this happened to you. Why did your boss just treat you really meanly? Why did somebody just let you down? Because you needed that experience for your soul's journey to wholeness. Why did you incarnate to an abusive family? Because you chose it. There's only free will. You chose it. You came in for your souls. They're actually obliging your soul. So the victim thing goes away. There's no more victim. And many people are very attached to their victim, their story. Okay, it's time to let it go. You know, the Frozen, the movie Frozen, that's, the animated Disney movie. I guess Hollywood hasn't hooked into Frozen.
I have a 4-year-old who sings it every day.
Yeah, exactly.
I know all the words.
Yeah, exactly. Would you like to sing it for
On
us?
Saturday.
Let it go. Yeah, I mean, it won an Academy Award, kids. This is Hollywood. Anyway, so I thought you'd get the reference.
I get it.
Yeah, it's the ice around the human heart, the holding on to the story that keeps us from our true self. It's like, let it go. So, so this construct the victim is no longer serves us, because we understand that it's not so. We are loved. We are desperately loved by all of creation. And we gave permission to the loving universe when we incarnated. So this definition is very key to this whole construct that we're presenting, this definition of humanity, because that's our overarching act of free will when we chose to incarnate on this journey to bring a gift with a purpose on this soul's journey to wholeness. All of creation is awaiting this gift. We promised we'd bring it. There's a party going on. We promised we'd bring a gift. And we incarnated into this frequency that said, no, you can't be your true self. To survive, you've got to do this, 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 and this. In this world of scarcity, you've got to fight to survive. It's survival of the fittest, yada, yada, yada. These core beliefs that we've taken on since Darwin and Descartes and all that. And so this journey is to take us and break us down, break our heart open, make sure that we think we're going in this direction when our soul came to go in this direction. Then something comes and says, sorry. And in this construct that we're presenting, circumstance loves us more than we do. Because we think we want to go here, and circumstance comes and says, you're going here. And then we find out that we're a whole lot happier over here than we were over here, becoming the doctor that Daddy always wanted us to be, when in fact we'd incarnated to be a poet. an artist, whatever that Daddy would never approve of. And all of a sudden we're the black sheep and nobody, all that love and respect and support and everything that we were desperate for so that we were successful. All of a sudden we're happy. We're in alignment with our soul's journey because circumstance just took us on this journey that we said, yes, circumstance, yes, loving universe, you can take me on this journey. So I'm sort of,
Let me do
yeah, okay. But one thing I wanted to share was that the way I came to this, because someone asked, how did you come to this, and Andrew shared a little that he did. When I was a teenager, I witnessed Florence Nightingale and the love that she evidenced for humanity, that I just saw that we are so capable of such love. And I just asked, why aren't we treating each other and our children and the earth that way? And what I came up with was we're missing information about the nature of the universe. It's just that simple. The logical mind is operating on erroneous information about the nature of the universe. So I spent my life seeking these missing pieces of the paradigm and took up with an Austrian Olympic ski champion and went off to Europe looking for it and found out just more of the same. Because we're European based, and then I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was the executive director of a Ski the Rockies, a marketing group of ski resorts. I was in New Mexico and picked up a book of Native American poetry, and I got it right there. Here are the missing pieces. 500 Indian nations have the missing pieces. So then visionary elders started coming into my life. And I'm also from a family who gave all their money away in the state of Maine, in the form of parks and everything. So they didn't resonate to the hoarding concept. And I was like, okay, what's up with that? Why are they giving their money away? So, and in the native way, you don't hoard. Hoarding is passé. It's okay. Keep a spin on the frog skins. Which is antithetical to everything we're taught. Our whole economic system is based with a big S. The whole Keynesian economic theory, the big S. Get the money in the bank, That's antithetical. That's doubt. That's a lower frequency. So it's a fascinating process, and we hope that we've given a good toolkit for moving into this higher frequency. So you want to?
Making sense at all? You put anybody to sleep yet? You woke up, that's good. Okay. So this, in an hour, we're attempting to present something that's pretty deep and pretty profound, and it probably takes, I'd say, a 5-day workshop to scratch the surface of this in terms of actual permanent change. I think there's something truly transformative here. I think that all of us are somewhere along the path. I'm not saying that anyone in this room doesn't, there may be some absolute beginners here. I think there are some masters, male and female, in this room. So what we're presenting is an alternative construct that I think works with no matter what your background is. Whether you grew up Jewish or whether you have been chanting mantras for the last 20 years or meditating or you're a Christian or whatever it is.
Or none of the above.
Or none of the above, right. Because this sort of avoids all of those sort of dogmas. There's no need for the dogmas. What we actually need is a what's the word? A more appropriate or a more loving or a more joyful understanding of the nature of life, of humanity, of the universe, of reality. And we can do that once we recognize that we've been trained otherwise, and a part of the whole spiritual path is letting go of that stuff. Just having the courage, having the trust to walk away from certain things.
It's really a pathway to our own heart. It's really all it's about.
Yeah. Connie brought up the song about, what's it called, Frozen? And the song Let Yourself Go, is it?
Well, let it go.
Let It Go. When Connie and I first met, I mentioned that, shall we dance?
You know, I was looking for it to turn it off and I couldn't find it.
Now you know where it is.
Now I know I have it, but I still don't know where it is. I apologize.
Connie and I were at Omega Institute in upstate New York in 2003 at this gathering of shamans. And the lead shaman, the guy who was really kind of running the show, was an Eskimo from Greenland, an Inuit. And his fundamental message was this: the hardest thing is to melt the ice around the human heart. And that seems to be the message of this film.
Yeah,
So now
you gotta go see Frozen, guys.
Now 4-year-olds
The first song is all about mining the ice around the heart, and it's the hardest thing. I mean, it's so in your face, it's wild.
And why have we allowed our hearts to become iced? Simply out of fear, which is the opposite of trust. Once we trust, we don't need that armor. The ice is a metaphor for the armoring that all of us, or most of us, have somehow built up through our lives. As when we're born, we don't have that. But I think most of us just kind of have to take on something, because we are growing up into a society in which many of the fundamental assumptions are fear-based. The neighbors are dangerous. We've got to have an army. We've got to have a border post with passports and all of that stuff. I'm not American. I've got to have special papers to be allowed to come and talk to you guys. That's a very strange concept, but we take it for granted. We don't. Who even thinks about, is it right to be American versus Australian versus Iranian versus whatever, versus Zulu, whatever? I love the fact that humanity is divided into all these different cultures with all these different manifestations and different skin colors and different religions and different musics and songs and arts, and I love that. Let's just honor and respect that, but not have to build barbed wire barriers between us. For what reason, So we've gone a long way down a very strange path. So I'm just going to go through this very quickly because we have so little time to get something accomplished. But the construct we're presenting is based on terminology, the use of a number of words, and it's in your handout, so I'll go through it quickly. I already said, it's the top part, it says definitions. Assumption. An assumption is a core belief which we take to be true without question. A paradigm is simply a set of assumptions, a complete worldview constructed of these individual assumptions. And I think it's obvious that if those assumptions are scarcity-based or fear-based or anxiety-based, we've actually constructed a world that could be better. Let's just say it could be improved.
So if we assume that it's abundant and we're in that frequency, then there's nothing to fight over.
Yeah.
It goes away.
So then the third definition is, Connie's mentioned this, but I think it's worth repeating. Humanity. A collection of divine, autonomous, sovereign beings who have chosen to incarnate on earth to learn and grow on their soul's journey to wholeness, each with an individual purpose and a unique gift. So it seems that perhaps there's no real way to prove this, but it's a wonderful way to see us as humans. Each of us arrived here through the body of a beautiful woman we called Mom. Mm-hmm. And before we did that, we came from some place, perhaps of consciousness, of knowing, of some place that we sort of have, little children might have memories of. You might think of it as heaven or something, but we came from that sort of the undifferentiated consciousness, and we individualized into this little baby who grew up and became me, and you, and you, and you. And what we do in that process is we forget everything we knew. We might have arrived with a vast knowing that then got narrowed down to this tiny little...
Wallace Black Elk always said, we're born knowing this much, and we narrow it down to what we can see and hear. He was a great Lakota elder who was a great friend of mine.
And I heard Lee upstairs say something like that earlier, that we come in from this this act of both courage and it's a wildly challenging thing to do, to actually show up as a human being. And then the process of remembering. We each perhaps have a mission, but we have to recall what that mission is and discover it. And it's the gift that each of us has to bring. We're not here to become conformists. We're not here to be exactly the same as each other. We're here to become the very best individual. My job is to be the best Andrew I possibly can and simply manifest me without fear. And I can only do that in the trust frequency.
And our friend that we're staying with, it was quite a cosmic being, she said that all of creation is awaiting us. And then this is what I always say, all of creation is awaiting the love in the human heart, for us to choose to open our hearts. We're going to change all of creation. And she actually confirmed that. She said, yeah, they're all out there waiting for us to do this, and clapping and yeah, go guys, you know, because this human experiment and experience is key. This isn't just a casual thing we're doing here, pushing through this fear and having all these experiences. Every single piece of it is key to the whole evolution of the divine, the whole evolution of the universe. So anybody that says humanity is worthless and we're better off without it or any of that, from my point of view, just doesn't understand our beauty and the importance. We're the crown jewel of creation that came here to do something so magnificent, and this walking through this fear is it. And all these old beliefs, and to let them go and choose out of free will something else. It's the kingpin. So.
And that is based on love. The fundamental unifying and creative force of the universe. When we use the word love with a capital L, that's what we're talking about. A fundamental force. You can identify that in quantum science. There is a fundamental unifying and creative force that has something to do with the Higgs boson. It has something to do with the gluon. It's something that both creates, sustains, and holds together this entire thing which we see as galaxies and so on. Frequency, the vibratory rate. This is not what you would look up in the dictionary. This is not what it would say about frequency. The vibratory rate that determines the characteristics of a particular reality. There's a wide range of frequencies, each with its own reality and its own distinct laws. So we vibrate anywhere we choose, from the lowest of the low, just to say that low is those dark, scary places, to the highest of the high, which are those ecstatic, blissful states, and all the various frequencies that we go through every day, and for most of us it varies.
And Henry David Thoreau, there's a kingpin quote from him that when I was sort of piecing this whole thing together, he says, when one walks confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will pass a certain boundary. He will experience a success unexpected in common hours. The laws that apply to him will be expanded, or new laws will be made in his favor, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. Okay?
That's toward the end of Walden.
It's in his conclusion.
In the conclusion to Walden.
I learned this, at least, by my experiment. And it goes with a companion quote that's attributed to Goethe, which many of you may know. He didn't actually write it. It was written by a
Scottish
mountaineer.
There you go.
But it's the one that I don't have this one quite as on the tip of my tongue. But it's when one commits without the chance of turning back, providence moves too, and one experiences all manner of unforeseen circumstances and material assistance which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. We can't even fathom what's out there, okay? And this is what Thoreau's saying, a success unexpected in common hours. So there's something, we have our and we're so powerful, our minds are so powerful, which we learn through The Secret, right? Very important in this step of the evolution of consciousness, the movie The Secret, because it let us know we have the power to manipulate the unified field. What it doesn't tell us is that there's something that's out there beyond our ability to imagine. So why would we manipulate the unified field? Because it's just going to enmesh us further in this reality. So yeah, we get the fancy car, we get the whatever it is we wanted, but okay, we've got the car, we got the payments to go with it. Then we've got to get the job to get the payments, and then we're leaving our kids, and then yada, 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 right? Because we thought we needed the car so that people would think we were successful. We needed for the job to, so we get the next, whatever, It all feeds on itself. And what we're saying with this construct is the universe wants more for us than we can fathom. I would never tell the universe what I want. Why would I? Why would I want this little pea brain running the show when there's a universe out there that wants more from me than I can imagine? I want that. And so walking into the unknown for me is the perfect place to be, so then I know I'm not in control. I don't want to be in control because of it. So
You don't need control when you're in the trust frequency. Control is a way of handling fear or uncertainty. When you're in total trust, you can just walk it and...
So we should keep getting through these because
We will.
Carla said that only an hour.
Yeah.
People are only going to, how are you guys doing? We don't want to overdo.
And they're totally
So-
jet lagged, and they're going to just shut off the lights and go to bed and leave us here all night.
You know my husband, Dad's like that.
No, the trust frequency, trust me. Wake
We just don't want to. We don't want to go on too long.
I think we get up to. I think we get up to about the 8th assumption. It's the one about time.
So he'll finish the
All right.
definitions, then we'll sort of
Yeah.
run through the paradoxes, and we've got some handouts that you can take home and ponder, and you can buy our book and watch our film and be on our email
And,
list
and stay in touch, because
and
this
let us
is
know what you think.
this is a collaborative unfolding
Yeah.
that we're playing whatever role we're playing in this.
Yeah.
This whole existence is an experiment, and let's just if we really do have these powers, let's just invent a world and a reality that's the finest we can come up with, and let's do
And
it.
it's all of us coming together and bringing our gifts. And it's a puzzle. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. And we've got a piece here, and you've got a piece there, and we're going to piece it all together and see something nobody has ever seen in the history of the planet. Yeah, it's all good news.
So I just gave you our definition of the word frequency, and then the next one's the trust frequency, where the soul's destiny awaits with more abundance, balance, freedom, and joy than we can fathom, where the true nature of the universe is experienced. Free will, simply the right to choose one's frequency. Because the moment we change our frequency, everything shifts.
And we have the right to not align with our
Yeah.
hearts. To me, that's free will. The right not to do it.
We can be complete
We can have
idiots.
the
We can be
crummiest
complete
life in the
idiots.
world we want. The universe loves us so much, it'll give it to us. Sure, you can have it. You can put your attention on conspiracy, and conspiracy will be in your life. Big Brother just might come and take you out, because that's your reality. It's not mine. I don't put my attention there. But we all have the free will to do that.
And because we're extraordinarily powerful, because we are not separate from the universe, there's no universe outside there that's actually giving us what we asked for. It's actually that, you see, words don't really work. We're desperately trying to find the words that will describe this process, and they don't always work. But
We're doing
free
the best
will,
we
the
can.
right to choose one's frequency, is the best little collection of words I could come up with to describe that. Circumstance, the seemingly uncontrollable outward events that influence our decisions. Circumstance, the seemingly uncontrollable outward events that influence our decisions. So look there, free will and circumstance, that's like determinism and
paradox.
free will. There's another paradox that's going to become clearer there. How do you resolve that? Do we have absolute free will, the ability, and yet, I can't go walk through that wall.
Yeah.
Not in my current state of consciousness, right? Yeah, exactly.
So Andrew, when we first started this, he had an expression, fucked by the fiery finger of fate.
It's an old sack. Go check with your local guy here, Sean Thompson. He'll tell you it's from Durban, South Africa. I was fucked by the fiery finger of fate. It was awful. Okay, here's a really important one. This is sort of the central, shall we say, the ratchet of the toolkit. So firstly, there are two kinds of consciousness that are relevant here. One is simply the consciousness of the universe, universal consciousness, the primordial life energy of the universe. So that's consciousness in the big picture. Human consciousness can be broken down into 7 terms or concepts, each of which happens to begin with the letter A, so we call it the 7 A's. What order are these in? Oh yes, there they are. Awareness, assumption, attitude, attention, alignment, action, and allowing. So, a lot of science has had a lot of trouble defining consciousness. So there's a breakdown of consciousness into its sort of, bite-sized chunks. I can talk, I can know what my state of awareness is, I can know where I'm putting my attention, I can know what I'm aligning with, I can know what actions I'm taking as a result of my attitudes and assumptions. All right, so
Here's
as
a
you
little
can
sentence.
see,
I put it all in one sentence. So listen up, Carol. With awareness and accurate assumptions, we can choose our attitude and where we put our attention, and align with our highest inner promptings with committed action, allowing the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams.
Nice.
How about that?
yay.
Put that in the handout.
The Connie manifest.
It's not. I have another handout, but I don't have it all.
Connie, that's one of the best ones.
She was the whole
too.
too.
Got that tonight. That was good.
Yeah.
With awareness and accurate assumptions, we can choose our attitude and where we put our attention, and align with our highest inner promptings with committed action, allowing the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams.
Go girl.
Nice. All right, and the last definition I'd like to get through is what we mean when we use the word universe. Because I think most of us came up to think of the universe as this mechanistic vision of the universe. When we use the term universe, we mean this: all, capitalized, all that is, both manifest and unmanifest, also known as God, Creator, Atman, Brahman, and so on. We simply call it, capitalized, the conscious, loving universe, because that term doesn't yet have any baggage. Because so many of those other words have so much baggage. All of the religious divisions and so on. So by universe we mean all that is, the only thing there is, that huge biological reality which is that of which we are a part. It's a living, ever-evolving, loving entity. Okay?
So, how are we doing? How's everybody doing? Should we run through the paradoxes?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a handout here that Andrew, I put the whole thing on one page, like I put everything in one sentence. Andrew calls a run-on sentence. Here is a page with everything on it.
The run-on page.
The run-on page that Andrew says would be great if it were divided into maybe a minimum of 3, if not 10. So it would make a great keynote speech, this whole thing. But here it all is.
What's it called? A PowerPoint or a
PowerPoint
or a Prezi,
thing.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, we're just, I don't know, it may make sense to some people and it may not, but you can take it home and study it because it is all here. But what we're basically saying with this paradox resolve is that we present and resolve 6 paradoxes. And on the left-hand column of this graph, we have the macro, our understanding of the nature of the universe that's shifting, that we're saying there's a frequency collision at this time because we have the old Descartes, Newton, matter creates mind, with a mind-body split. That's the old paradigm that we think is real, but isn't. And we're presenting this other paradigm with our assumptions that's on the right side in green, that is an Einstein quantum physics based paradigm. So what we're saying with this graph is that there's a shift in our understanding of the nature of the universe, and on the right side of this graph there's a shift in our understanding of humanity's nature and our place in the universe, our power and our place in the universe. So that these two transformations are creating this frequency collision, we're saying, and that this construct that we're presenting resolves that collision because it's bringing information to the logical mind that helps us understand the mechanics, how the universe works, why there's war and abuse, and why we've had abuse, because we're love. You know, that shifts everything. Do you agree?
I think I'm only punishing you because I love you.
Yeah, well, yeah, because my soul is magnetizing the behavior, is bringing in that behavior for my soul's journey. So thank you.
And I understand that perspective, but what I'm saying is that's quite a collision.
Yes, quite a collision.
Yeah.
So,
Meta view.
huh?
Meta view.
Meta view.
It's like pop up and look at it from a very, very,
Very.
wide lens.
Yes, very high. Because for me, there's only the coming of peace on earth. That's all anything has ever been about. Absolutely everything. So I ask, how does this serve the coming of peace on earth? Anything. From, macro level, micro level, everything. How does it serve the opening of the human heart? How does it serve the coming of peace on earth? Because that's all there is for me. So, this graph is showing that once we understand this conscious loving nature of the universe, that it allows us to meld on an individual level our divine and ego selves. We merge. We don't get rid of our ego. We meld it with our divine self, and we shift because we trust a conscious loving universe. We can become that in our behavior, in our actions. And this country was founded by people who believed that we could do it. What's in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution and all that, those boys that drafted that thing, they had a vision for humanity, that we could do it in society. We could behave this way. The American dream, abundance for all, liberty for all. We're not doing it because we're in the lower frequency, but there's a vision that we can do it, and we will do it. I mean, you all know, we're all losing our minds, we're losing our memories. I don't know, several people mentioned that tonight. We can't do it with the old mind, so we're losing our memory. I got this 20, 30 years ago. That's how it's going to happen. We're going to forget. And it's so wild because I've just been watching it over the past 30 years as it's become more and more. And now so many people mentioned it tonight, that my mind is gone. Like, great, come, we'll give you something to... And somebody said, yeah, in their acting, that's what they do. They empty their mind so they can become something else. So that's the whole thing. It's not senility, it's not Alzheimer's, it's the evolutionary leap. All good news, guys. So anyway, so we move into this through this this new way of seeing, we can trust, we merge our divine self and our ego self, and we become the true human. Our choices and behaviors change, our society changes, and then it goes down into this middle thing where what the society, what it's going to look like. Ease, trust replaces fear, ease replaces struggle, serenity replaces tension, generosity replaces hoarding, abundance replaces scarcity, unity replaces separation, new systems develop, new relationships replace outmoded ways of being, an understanding of the interconnectedness and sacredness of all things emerges. And that's it, folks.
Let me close with one little thought here. What we've been talking about really is sort of parallel to upgrading our operating systems. If you think of it like in the computer language, we've been operating on an outdated, running on an outdated operating system, if you think of it that way. So can we upgrade our operating system? What is the operating system of the human being? It really is our assumptions. It's that fundamental. It's those thoughts which determine the decisions we make about what we do in our lives, how we manifest. And coming out of a fear-based operating system into a trust-based operating system changes everything to this extent that the planet we find ourselves living on, the reality we find ourselves experiencing, is actually no different from that thing which is known as heaven or nirvana. We can do that. Individuals do that through their spiritual practice or through epiphanies or through grace or whatever. Throughout history there have been, and right on this planet, there are plenty of people who are actually living in heaven, because heaven's not some other place over there. Heaven is right here, right now, and that's, to me, maybe the most important message in this book. That we can actually live a life that is no different from heaven. You do not have to die to go to heaven. Now, anybody here not familiar with the NDE phenomenon, the near-death experience? Okay, so I'm going to take that as a yes. Everybody is familiar. We're speaking at a conference on the consciousness of immortality in Sedona in a couple of weeks. Eben Alexander, the book Proof of Heaven, you aware of that? Okay. What Eben says is that heaven is, in fact, right here, right now. It's just in a different frequency.
He actually says that.
That's which so affirms what we had already written in our book.
And he went there I heard him speaking, and he's actually describing what we're describing.
Yeah.
So
Yes, he's coming to California this month for the first time.
Okay, and he's actually at this conference in Sedona if you want to come in. When is that?
The 12th and 13th.
12th and 13th, great. So, point being that we've always had this intimation of heaven. The poets have spoken about it, the prophets have spoken about it. There's another reality that was always assumed to be somewhere else, and you had to die to get there. And we've now had, it seems, I had not heard of this near death. It was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in maybe 71 where I first encountered it. It seems to be a fairly recent thing. It may not. This may be been going on forever. I'm only recently aware of it. But the near-death experience where people go there and come back, because most people go there and we don't know where they go because they don't come back and they don't tell us because they died. That's the term we have. If there is no death and heaven is real and heaven is right here, right now, but tuned to a different frequency, and if we can change our frequency, you get where I'm going?
It's the whole thing.
Here we are.
On earth as it is in heaven.
As above, so
Yeah.
hermetic axiom.
Yeah. But the whole Lord's Prayer thing, we've given permission, we've said, okay, we're doing it. On earth as it is in heaven.
But isn't
Thy
that
will
truly
be
near
done.
death?
Pardon?
Isn't that truly near death though? Because don't you give yourself up or what you thought you were? Don't a part of you die to come to heaven?
So there's an interesting way of looking at it, perhaps. What if what we have to do is actually die to our previous self by letting go of that construct that we used to think was us. And now I'm building a new me based on a different set of beliefs. My worldview is different. I'm a different being. The power of my consciousness is creating a different reality. And because it's on a way higher vibratory rate, what I'm experiencing is my version of heaven. And 2012, December 21st, 2012, there was supposed to be something happening, remember?
Yeah.
Has anybody noticed anything since?
Yes.
Anything good?
Difficult.
Me too.
Yeah.
Interesting. Something, I swear, something's going on. I look out through these eyes and I see something different outside, in the illusion of outside. You know, I know that there's... So I just became speechless, so thank you.
So, yeah, so we'd love to have a Q&A if people would like to comment. But one thing, I just wanted to run through just these 6 paradoxes, you know, which is love, not love. You know, we're saying this love is, okay, what do you mean? There's, of course, it's not all love. There's, that it's a conscious universe, we determine it by the power of our consciousness. What do you mean? It's a mechanistic universe. Free will, there's only free will. What do you mean? There's determinism, and we resolve that with the circumstance, you know, that it loves us more than we do. Timeless, we say it's timeless in Assumption 7, you know, it all has to do with time, because in the higher frequency there is no time. So it's resolved in that one assumption. And then there's the oneness, separation and oneness. We're all one. On one level, we're all one. On one level, where we are individual aspects of that oneness. And then the upward spiral. We're going on an upward spiral, and then it looks like we're going on a downward spiral. So, so I just wanted to just run through those 6 things, and you can have a look at the assumptions and this sheet and see where you get to.
It's also, it's very interesting because, in a way, because I get this from the book as well, is that we've reached a point where we really don't need a lot of coaching on what things mean as much as simply to anchor for consideration. Destruction, upward spiral, separation, oneness, that it's not this or that. I really feel like that was the paradox. It was that, do you resolve it by siding? And when we move now from a line to a circle, which is really this sense of coming full circle, it does seem that, you know, I was always impressed with Proust that said that to think is the capacity to hold 2 conflicting points of view and feel no need to side with either. And I thought that's really what you're trying, and this is why I really do feel that we need to have tools that cultivate a true philosophical inquiry. Philosophia, the love of wisdom, which isn't to side with some aspect, but how do I hold the contradictory and find a greater synthesis? And that's why I feel like what you're getting at, and in a way distilling it, now is saying, if you just, almost like a tincture, put these contradictions into the question, into the imagination. Feel this other, because you're getting at it to me, I'm feeling this as well. There is something that said, when you realize it's not to resolve it by changing it, but to simply open it from within, that maybe it's far more interconnected. But it's for us to say, yeah, why am I assuming that it's not? And that's why I really almost feel like if you go over, even like a mantra, I live in a loving, creative universe. And that is true. That's the one we're awakening. And that's why I find that, like tonight, this sense of affirmation. I mean, I just want to honor that your questioning and true philosophical inquiry is what's really important now. Because it is saying, if we ask fundamental questions, we're going to get a whole lot more assistance, you know, based upon what we're willing to inquire into and discover.
Yeah, thank you. I would also like to say that there's nothing in the entire universe that says, when we'll go home to bed tonight, wake up in the morning, that we wake up to the world that we left today. It can be a completely, that's one of the most fundamental assumptions that may be groundless. Somehow
I
we've
like that.
collectively locked it in. But we can wake up to a whole other thing tomorrow if, and I don't know where to continue with that.
Yeah, but why not?
Yeah, why not?